Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. If you're joining us live, or if you're obviously catching up on the recording later, we really appreciate your time. So my name is Ben, and we, as Apps Events, provide training for schools using Google for Education's tools. I'm joined by Lawrence today. He's kind of the mastermind behind this particular event, where we wanted to reach out to maybe the group that are taking all of this situation on the chin daily and supporting your children with remote learning, and just wanted to take you through some of the, hopefully some bits that'll make that experience ever so slightly easier. Though we appreciate we're not going to solve it completely. So yeah, Lawrence, is that a fair overview of what we've got ahead of us this evening?
It definitely is. So I'll be going as slow as possible so you can make sure that you can see everything that's going on. But before we even get started, I just want to say, congratulations, guys. You're doing an amazing job. We know how hard it is juggling homeschooling and working. So we're hopeful that you'll get something from this as well. So yeah, Ben, let's get started.
I gave everyone a massive view of my face just then.
Just before we get started, you may have noticed you can say hello in the chat, and you can also ask your questions that we'll be picking up towards the end as well.
Yeah, so also when we get to the Q&A later, we have got Sonia and Tristan joining us. So Sonia works at Woodland Academy in Ealing. She heads at that school, and they're using Google Classroom with their primary children. And then Tristan will be joining us, who works across a trust in the north of England. And they've got primary and secondary, and Tristan's background is secondary. So we've got some teachers in the middle of this who can also offer their advice and support and a few tips as well along the way. So thank you for those people saying hello. Hello, Magdalena and John, Shardine, and wow, that is my favorite YouTube name so far. Okay, so the plan is to just, first of all, we're talking about Google for Education, but let's start with an explanation about what on earth that is. For many of you being thrown into remote learning again, you might suddenly have been thrown Google Classroom and other Google tools at you that previously you maybe didn't know existed, or you'd seen in different contexts and not in education. So we'll give you a little overview of that. Then I'm going to pass over to Lawrence, who is going to, as he said, slowly go through Google Classroom and just make sure that as you're there at home supporting your children, when they're asking about what do I submit, what does the teacher need from us, that will help you navigate that Google Classroom view for students and help you understand that's where you can communicate. Here's where you'll find the work, and just give you the tools you need to communicate effectively with the school and manage learning as best you can in very challenging circumstances. We'll get some top tips from Sonia and Tristan and ourselves. And please, please, please ask as many questions as you can in the comments. So please do contribute with your questions. We'd really like to make sure we cover all of those in the time we've got this evening. So thank you to everyone saying hello. And yeah, keep the questions coming, because we want to make sure you feel a bit more confident with supporting your child with remote learning at the end of that half hour or so. All right. So Google for Education, you may not be aware, but you may not have been aware, you're very aware now, that Google offers a suite of tools to schools. It's a very different setup to your Gmail account. If you've got a personal Gmail account, works very differently to that in terms of how it's set up. And schools can choose to get a free suite of tools to provide the children with collaborative working environment, Google Classroom, Gmail, and other tools like that. So it all comes under the umbrella of Google for Education, which also includes, if any of your children are using Chromebooks in school, that's all part of that Google for Education offer. So as we said, that consists of a few key tools. There are a few more that you don't really need to know about today. If you're accessing any of these tools, if you have access to Chrome browser, Google's own web browser, that will ensure that those tools work as well as they possibly can. Obviously, you may have already found that they work through Safari and Edge and other browsers as well, but obviously they're just optimized to work perfectly in Chrome. So if you can get your child opening up Chrome and signing into Chrome with the account that we'll talk about in a minute. That should give you the best possible experience and hopefully the easiest possible experience. So the tools that you might be getting confronted with for your child's learning is Google Classroom, I imagine most. There's also Google Meet, which is the video calling option, and then Mail. Depending on the age of your child, we find some schools turn Mail off for the younger children and just communicate through Google Classroom. If you've got older children, you might find that they also have a Gmail account through school that is used for some kind of communication as well. So if it's not an option you've got, don't worry, that might be a choice the school have made just to make things manageable. Down the bottom, something that's worth being aware of is that Google has a suite of tools under Google Drive. So Google Drive is, if you're familiar with OneDrive, cloud-based storage, or Dropbox, Drive is the Google cloud-based storage. And in that, you've got Slides, which is like PowerPoint, and you've got Docs, which is the equivalent of Word, and you've got Sheets, which is the equivalent of Excel, if those are tools you're a bit more familiar with. In addition to that, you might find that your child is asked to complete a quiz. Now, Google Forms allows teachers to create quizzes, quick self-marking quizzes, just to check how everyone's getting on. You might find that sometimes your children, instead of Classroom, are directed to a site where it might be that all of the learning for the week or the school information is all on one site. And that can be made through Google Sites, which is also an option as part of that Google for Education offer. And maybe a few of you have also noticed an interactive whiteboard appearing on maybe some of your children's Meet calls or being issued through Classroom. And Jamboard provides a kind of interactive digital whiteboard. Spotted the question from John, which we'll come to in a couple of moments. So we'll pick that one up about that Mail question. The main tool that people have been encountering for both the first lockdown and now again is Google Classroom. So that free online platform allows teachers to create assignments and announcements and just share those learning resources. I would imagine a lot of you who have joined us are sort of interacting with that on a daily basis. And hopefully you're here because you want to just understand it a little bit better. And so it all makes sense. And if you've got any questions about where do I find, what happens if I click on these kind of questions, please do post them away. And probably most importantly, that is the platform which will allow your child to communicate with their teacher. And we're going to show that in a couple of moments. Just had the question there. So I'll just bring that one up quickly and address it. So if you turn off Mail, so I talked about not having Gmail for students. If you turn off Mail for students, the private messages and comments won't work. Potentially, yes, but some schools will redirect that to their Outlook email, for example. Other schools will be informing the children that everything we communicate is through Google Classroom. So that's where you'll go to find that kind of information. There is another option as well. If you're accessing Google Classroom on a phone or a tablet, then you can have the notifications on as you would for other apps on your devices. And it might be that that's how they're encouraging the children to be aware of updates on Classroom. So it doesn't mean that you won't get them, but it might mean that the school's got to think about the delivery mechanism for that. And there are a few different options. But feel free to come back on that if I've kind of haven't answered that fully for you, John. Okay. So something else to be aware of is there's been lots of talk about devices, and schools have been applying for devices to be allocated to them to make sure that children can access learning resources from home. There can't be an expectation that every single one of you has enough devices to cover every child in the house, plus your own work if you're working remotely and everything else you've got to tackle. But just to make you aware, Google Classroom is web-based, so you can go to classroom.google.com to sign into it. But it also comes on phones and mobile devices and tablets as an app, both for Apple and Android devices. But you can also get Google Classroom on Xboxes, PS4s, and a Kindle Fire. So we'll share a bit of information later if that's of interest and you want that to be enabled on additional devices you've got in the house. Another thing to be aware of, if you're using iPads, if you're using phones to access Google Classroom, which is absolutely fine, you might also need to add the other Google apps. So if you've ever opened up a Google Classroom assignment, clicked on a document that the teacher's issued and wondered why you can't edit it, one option is the teacher might have made it view only because they just need you to see the information. The other thing might be if you're accessing on a tablet or phone, you might need to add the Google Docs, Google Slides, and Google Drive apps to your device to enable you to have that editing and collaborative function as well. So just look out for that if you need those additional Google apps to be on the same device that you're using for Google Classroom. Oh, and can I just say hello to Jose from Peru? Great. I know this truly is a global pandemic, and obviously these same conversations in houses are going on across the world. Just before I pass over to Lawrence, just a key thing, if your child is using Google Classroom, then you should have been provided with a login and password unique to them. If that's not the case, just let us know and we can sort of try and advise you a little bit. But you should find that you've been issued with a username and a password that will allow them to log in to Google Classroom and get specifically the work for them. Okay, Lawrence, does that sound like anything I've missed?
Not at all, Ben. Thank you for that. So I'm going to move on to the demo now, and I will go as slow as possible because we want you to get as much as possible from this demonstration. But please do feel free to ask any questions or anything that I've covered, and we will pick that up in the Q&A session.
Awesome. So our next port of call is a demo. So Lawrence is going to jump into Google Classroom as a student, I believe.
Yes, as a student, yeah.
So you're going to see the experience from hopefully your point of view, the point of view experiencing, and you might notice that Lawrence's teacher is a rather underdressed bald man, but let's see how it goes.
Thank you, Mr. Rouse.
Cool. I'm going to jump into the background. Let me know if you need me at all. And yeah, over to you, Lawrence.
Brilliant. Okay, so the first screen that we're seeing here is what I like to call the launch pad. So for the lessons that your child is taking at secondary school or at primary school, there's normally is a corresponding class for that. I've seen in primary school, they will have maybe one for English, maths, or science. Secondary school for all maybe the 10 subjects that they are doing. So I can go into any of these classrooms to see what work is available for me. But before I do that, one of the bits that I just want to highlight is on this page is the to-do bit, which is in the top left-hand corner and is actually very handy because by clicking on the to-do, I can see what work is actually due for the next couple of weeks, this week or later on. So I did that by simply clicking on to do. So I could look down here in this week, if I just expand that now and zoom out, I can see all the tasks that are due this week and when they are due as well. So this is really handy when you're asking your child, what do you have? What work do you need to complete? And one of the things that I think is really useful to do is actually ask them by using the terminology is, what do you have to complete on your classroom? And use the terminology to do. Can you show me to do on classroom? Because that will throw your child off as well. And it makes them realize actually you've been looking at Google Classroom and you know what they are talking about. So I can also see any work that I've missed if I missed any deadlines. So I have missed some deadlines here and that's displayed in red. And then I can also see the tasks that I have completed along with the grades and I have turned them in. So we're just going to go back to our classroom homepage. And to do this, I'm going to click in the top left-hand corner on the three lines. and then click on classes. So I'm back to my home page here. And now what I will do is I'm going to go into a classroom now to get that view and to show you what you should be seeing when you look at your child's classroom. So I'm going to click into supporting your child with remote learning. So we've got a couple of things on here that we want to have a look at today. So we've got on the left-hand side, another place to see all the tasks that I have coming up on the left-hand side, just over here. So it tells me what's due today, and this is specific to this classroom. This is also known as the stream. So any notification, assignments, announcements will be displayed here as well. I can also reply in the stream if my teacher has asked me a question as well. And it will vary school to school, depending if they've put that permission for students to actually comment in the stream or to make an announcement. But sometimes it can be a bit confusing of where the assignments might be or what tasks do I actually need to complete. And to find where the assignments are, I will go to the top and I will just click on Classroom. So the default page when you go into Classroom is the stream. And if I want to find my assignments, I would then click on Classwork. So I'm going to click on Classwork now. I'm going to go into there. So what I've done for the purpose of this webinar is I've set up some topics, but I've named them as Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, just so that if a student wants to go in, they'll be able to see what work is due on certain days as well. This might look different for your child's school. Some teachers might arrange the work in topics or units that they're doing for that particular course as well. So the first one I'm going to go into is my future ambition. So if I just zoom in here, I just want to show you something here. I can see this icon, which is paper, a notice board, and this indicates to me that this is a assignment that I need to complete. So I'm just going to go into this now, and I'm going to go and view the assignment. So again, we've got a couple of things here that we're going to have a look at. In this bit here, I've got my instructions that tells me what I need to complete and how I need to do it. And then also down here, I've got class comments. So say if I'd come into this classroom, I wasn't really sure, I could use class comments to pose a question to the group, and my peers could actually reply to me as well. We just need to bear in mind that this can be seen by the whole class as well. Okay, so just bear that in mind. But if I go over to the right-hand side, I've also got private comments. And this is a way to communicate with my teacher. So if I was to put a private comment in here, my teacher would get a notification of that I've asked a question potentially. So let's just say this assignment, I know Mr. Rouse normally sets up templates for me, but I can't seem to find a template here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask, is there a template for this? So is there a template for this task? And I'm simply going to click on the arrow here to send this. So this will post to Mr. Rouse, and only he can see this. The rest of the class cannot see this. So if I just send that now, that will go through. So hopefully Mr. Rouse is going to come back to me on what I need to do and if there is a template for this. But while I'm waiting for that to come back, I'm just going to move ahead and just show a couple of other ways to upload information. Because I haven't got a template that would normally appear here or a worksheet, I can potentially start to create my presentation. So to do that, I would simply just click on Add or Create. And then we get a couple of options here. I can create a new slide directly from this classroom, and that would be the presentation that I would have to submit. Equally, what I could do is I could upload a file from my device. So there are some cases where some of the work may be completed on paper. And what you could do here is simply take a picture of the work that you have completed or your child has completed, and then click on File, and then you'd be able to select the location of the file and upload it to Google Classroom. So there we go. Mr. Rouse has come back to me now. He goes, "Hi, thanks for asking. You can choose how to submit this assignment by using the add or create option." So that is that dialogue of, if I'm unsure about something, I can still reach out to my teacher, and that will just be shown to him. So I'm just going to say, thanks. So just remember that if I was having to do this and create my own doc, I could do it from simply just clicking add or create and then go into the relevant application. I can also add in from Google Drive as well. And we just assume that I have completed this task. And the key thing for me to make sure I do, so my teacher knows that I've completed this, is to click on mark as done. And then it will double check to say, look, you haven't attached anything. So that's another warning bit, just to make sure that I have this, attached a document. But I'm going to click mark as done. So that's one type of assignment that I've submitted as well. So if I ever need to go back to the stream, what I can simply do is go to the top, and where it's got a title of the class, I can just simply click on that, and that will bring me back to the stream. So I'm going to go and see what else I need to go and do. So I'm going to click on classwork again. And now this time I'm going to go into Tuesday's work, which is the reading and comprehension. But this looks a bit different because my worksheet has been attached this time for me to complete. So I'll just do the same thing that I did previously, was to click on view assignment. So just down here, click on view assignment. Zoom out there. And it looks a bit different from the first task that I completed. This time I've got a document to view, so which is just a simple Google Doc. My task is here. But what's different on this screen is I have a rubric, which is essentially a marking grid. So I can have a look here and see, how do I get these top grades? Because it breaks it down for me. And this is really good to help the students who are working remotely look at how I would get the points. Just zoom out of there. And what I've got this time in your work is I actually have a file that's been attached there for me to complete. And you can see it's got the student one name, and that would normally be your child's name as well. So in order for me to go in and edit this document, what I'm simply going to do is just click on it. And this will open up the document that I'm going to be working on. And because I'm very organized and ahead of time, I've actually started to do this task already. So what Mr. Rouse can do at the same time is he can actually jump into this document with me and collaborate in real time. So I can see Ben is in this document because his icon is there. So I can see Mr. Rouse is working with me in this document. So Mr. Rouse can then go through and actually start to put comments on my work, which you normally would see in your child's book. So I'm still getting that experience of their feedback on specific tasks in this document too. So we'll just have a look at what's in. Please check. Please check please can you check your punctuation and grammar? So I would check my punctuation and grammar, and I would just again say, yes, sir. Or I could say, I have some more help on this. Yes. I can reply. And again, that's given that dialogue between the teacher and the student as well. And we're just going to fast forward a little bit. So let's assume that I've made all these changes. I'm happy with them. I could also resolve them as well. But again, that just depends on your school, on what their policy is, because they might say to the students, please leave the comments open as well. So as we can see, we're going through there, and Ben has come back to me and he's given me a bit more help on this as well. So imagine I've completed all the changes. The important thing for me to do once I'm happy with this is in the top right, I've got turn in. Now it's a very American term, but essentially the same as hand in. So I would have to submit my work to Mr. Rouse. So I'm happy with this. So what I will do now is click on turn in. And again, before I just turn it in, it will just ask me to confirm, am I happy with this? You know, am I sure that I want to turn in this work? So I would just click on turn in. And what you will notice now is that it's changed from assigned to turned in. And some of the issues that I have seen or have heard about is that students will say, oh, I can't edit the work. And the reason why they cannot edit the work is because they have submitted it. And the teacher now becomes the owner of that document. If I wanted to make changes to that document, I would simply click on submit. And then I would be able to go back in and edit it as well. So just to recap, I can click on submit if I wanted to edit the document. And just in the bottom, in the right, we have private comments, and that's for when you want to talk to your teacher privately. And at the bottom, I then also have class comments. I hope you were able to get something from that, and that has helped. But that is a kind of a whisk tour, even though I still going to go quite slowly, around Google Classroom.
Hey, Lawrence. Actually, just while you've got that open in front of you, Erin makes a good point. When you have a Google document as an assignment, it's got the turn in button. Erin's asking, what if the piece of work that they've opened up and worked on doesn't have the turn in button? Where should they go to turn that in?
So what you simply do is, I just click on there. I've got the add or create. So if I've been working on that document and it's located in my drive, where it should be mainly, or it could be on your computer, I would simply click on my Google Drive, and then I would browse to my drive and locate that document. And then that will give me the chance to, let's just click on this one actually.
Good choice.
And then that will attach that document, and then I would have the option to turn it in.
Awesome. There's obviously loads to show, but we had a few questions coming in, and I think actually it's probably a good time to also bring in our experts, if that sounds okay to you, Lawrence.
Absolutely. They're the ones who are using it day to day.
So we'll keep on answering the questions in the comments. Please keep them coming, especially those really key ones like, what if there's no turn in button? Those moments when you're going to get really frustrated because your child has done the work. They've done amazing work. You want to show it, but there's a barrier in the way. And equally, we had a question from Carmel around that process of taking a photo and getting into Classroom. So actually what I was going to do is I'm going to switch us and bring in our resident expert. So I mentioned Sonia before. Welcome, Sonia. I also mentioned Tristan. And we're also very privileged to also have Darren join us as well. So Sonia is at Woodlands Academy Primary. Darren is at the Enterprise Academies Trust. And Tristan is across Outward Academy. So lots of expertise, lots of children that are working with who are remote and trying to manage it. So yeah, thank you for coming along, everyone, and really appreciate your time this evening.
No problem.
Thank you for having us too.
Cool. So we'll pick up some of the questions in the comments as we go. But as Lawrence was demonstrating Google Classroom, he had his classwork set up as Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. Just interested to know what you're seeing amongst the schools and the teachers that you're working with as to how they're setting it up and what's been most successful. Darren, I know you've got a couple of examples that you wanted to share.
Yeah, sure. So across our trust, we've got primary, we've got secondary, and we've got special education academies. And what we're seeing is a little bit of variety. Generally, on a day-to-day basis, when we're in school, primaries are tending to do it week by week or day by day, and secondaries are tending to do it maybe by topic or by theme, or if it's a Key Stage 4 lesson, maybe by unit or particular learning objective on a BTEC and things like that. However, while we're not in school, we've found in most cases it's much more helpful for the students for things to be organised in topics by week beginning, or week 1, week 2, week 3, or however you want to do it, just to help them keep it in that order, really, because it's, as we all know, it's very difficult to remember what day it is sometimes. It all merges together. So we're trying to do week beginning, 18th of January, and then within that, we're dating every individual assignment as well.
So as a parent of a 6 and a 9-year-old, one of the challenges we found is kind of disseminating information from an email and from the folder structure and trying to put those all together. I'll let you interpret what's happened with my own kids' school. But I'd be really interested in the comments if parents have a point of view on if there's anything that has really helped you to navigate things quickly as you're trying to sort of get your children set up, but then also get on a work call or head out to work yourself. Anything you've seen that has been really useful, or any requests you've got, let us know. Tristan, anything to add to that in terms of how the classwork is being set out for the schools that you've got in the trust?
Yeah, so for our schools, I'd say it is very similar. For primary, we tend to put kind of the date at where the topic would be. And then in our secondaries, like Darren said, it's mainly for GCSE, we'll probably split it up by unit. And I think we always encourage teachers to, put the due date on there. And I think just to know, a note on that is that obviously, teachers are very much learning this in some cases at the same time as students are using it, and they are trying their very, very best. So, one thing I was watching that, and I think it's a really good example that's been given of how to access work. But I think sometimes if something isn't set up perfectly, I think we've got to remember, not to give them too hard a time. They are trying really hard, and they're doing a really good job at it in general.
Yeah, definitely echo that.
Yeah. So Sonia, you are heading up a primary school, and I think your teachers are learning Google Classroom sort of as they go. So what kind of things have you learned so far in your journey with remote learning?
Thank you, Ben. Yes, we have taken on Google Classroom. It's been, we started last year, so we are on a journey. And initially at first, just like I'm sure with parents, all our teachers are quite nervous. They're quite worried, how am I going to learn something new? But to be honest, very quickly, as they started using it and making mistakes, because when you make a mistake, that's when you learn how to improve for the next time. And yeah, they started to work with it really quickly, and by now they're working really, really well. But I think what I would say to parents is, don't worry if you are a bit concerned, or I'm not doing the right thing, or maybe I'm letting my child down, I'm not doing it properly. Just take your time and remember that children are really resilient. So, if you have any concerns, just do reach out to your school and do ask, because I have had a lot of parents that have emailed or called and said, oh, help me, I can't find my work, my child can't find this. And actually it's taken like a 5-minute phone call, or I've taken some pictures and sent it back to them, and it just solves the problem, and then the next time they're ready to go. So yeah, do reach out.
Definitely. Sorry, Ben, just to add to what Sonia said, is also reach out to the schools, but also there is a strong community on Twitter, and sometimes if you throw that question out there, there'll be a number of people that will reply to that, because we're all going through this together. And us EdTech trainers who are not in the classroom want to help in any way we possibly can as well.
Sorry, I just want to add to that as well, Lawrence, what you've just said. Just as teachers as well, we generally tend to Google everything. So Google is your best friend. So if you're stuck and if you need an answer, just Google it, and there are plenty of great videos that you can find that show you exactly what to do. So there's lots of help out there.
Yeah, no, actually, I mean, so true. The amount of questions I've answered about Google for Education myself with a little Google is yeah, not to be underestimated. So that's the classwork, obviously the first bit of Encounter. We're getting a few questions around those using Google Classroom to enable a live lesson. So Sharon particularly was just saying there about there was a live lesson organised as you missed it. Just before we get to Sharon's question specifically, how are you going about using the Google Meet option through Classroom in your own schools? If we would start with Darren again.
Yeah, sure. So I've been live teaching all day, actually. So what I've been doing with my students is obviously there's a link that's integrated within Google Classroom itself, which, as we've said in the chat, does provide some additional safeguards. So what I tend to do with my students is I hide that link when I don't want them to use it. And then what I will do is about 5 minutes before our live lesson, I will make sure I'm in that Meet first. And then I will make the Meet icon and the link visible at the top of the stream page. Now, obviously, if students are on mobiles, it doesn't appear as a link. It appears as a little camera icon, but it will appear in that header just underneath where it says on the screen there, supporting your child with remote learning, as a link once I've made it visible. The issue I tend to find is sometimes the students will come into Google Classroom early and they'll be on that page. I'll then make the link live and they'll say they can't see the link. And all they need to do is simply refresh their page and they'll see the most recent version of that page. But that's the easiest and the safest way of doing it. And what I've also been doing, just to help me, because I take a register at the start of every lesson, is I turn, at the teacher's end, we have quick access, which we can turn on or off. And essentially I turn that off because it makes every student joining ring a doorbell. And then I physically have to admit them into the classroom. And that gives me additional control over who's coming into the lesson, but also control over seeing who's coming in and actually ticking them off. And that way no one slips in unnoticed and arrives and feels like they've been ignored because nobody's spoken to them because we were in the middle of doing something else at the time. So that's what I do, just to make sure I acknowledge everyone as they come into the calls.
Yeah, we've heard a lot of questions from teachers about how the best way to manage Meet. So I anticipate that a lot of some parents will be seeing the consequences of that there, and as teachers get better at that process. Sonia and Tristan, anything you want to add on that live lesson option through Classroom?
I think the only thing I add, which might be slightly different to Darren's, just because kind of different schools and different ways of doing things. Quite a lot of schools that I work with will put the Meet link on the assignment as like a hyperlink. So where Lawrence was showing you where you can kind of view your child's work and where the child can do their work, they'll actually put the link on there as well, so that there's another place to click on, just to help encourage people get to the right place. So I think Ben's going to show you where that is now.
Yeah, so that would mean as part of that assignment, there's also at this time, click on this link, and that's where we'll be doing the live lesson. Cool. I think that helps that bit as well, doesn't it? Just to sort of put it in as many places as possible, as people navigate from different places as well.
Definitely.
Awesome. Sonia, is there anything you wanted to add from a primary perspective? Because obviously you have younger children accessing, and that provides there's more onus on the parent, I would say, in some cases.
Yeah, we have timetables that we've put together for the children. Obviously, every school's different. So we've tried to make the younger children have a certain time in the morning and then the older children in time in the afternoon. And we do the same. We have the link at the top of the page where children can access that. But then teachers also tend to write it in the stream. Just like 2 or 3 minutes before, they'll start sort of say, get ready, your lesson starting in 2 minutes. And actually, most of the time we have lots of children writing on the stream, we're ready now, where's the link? So yeah, and actually, even with our reception children, it took a matter of days before they were on their Meet. They were able to mute themselves. They know how to raise their hand. They can unmute themselves. So it really didn't take much time at all. But yeah, I know that every school does it differently. But if you are having any worries or any problems with that, just contact your school, because there are different ways to do that.
Yeah.
Lawrence, if as a student you just give that page a refresh, you should find, there we go, that I've just sort of shown an example of that by posting the Meet link there. So I've copied the Meet link as a teacher. So that might be something that maybe you want to reach out to the school and just ask if they could replicate it. I'm cautious of saying reach out to the school, because obviously everyone's busy and trying to do their best. But if there's anything that makes your life a little less stressful, then feel free to sort of reach out through the right channels and ask that.
Can I add something as well there, Ben? Just off the back of that. What, from talking to several people from different schools over the last few days, I think it's fair to say that there are very different approaches depending on what school you're dealing with.
Exactly.
And as a parent, that can be challenging, because you might have one child who's being dealt with in one way and another child who's having things in a different way. And that's confusing enough as it is. But there is, I've noticed, a real kind of difference in opinion over the issues of whether cameras should be on or off, which I think is important to highlight, because some schools and some trusts will say absolutely the students' cameras need to be off. Others will say no, they need to be on. And obviously that can cause an element of confusion for parents. And all of it is for safeguarding reasons. So if you have any concerns, as Ben said, do contact the schools just to clarify why and what the correct procedure is, because it can easily get confusing.
Definitely.
Yeah, and we were talking about Meet as potentially a follow-up to this session, rather than sort of muddying the waters and trying to cover that in a short period of time. So again, if Meet is something you're grappling with as a parent and you'd like a follow-on session where we spend a bit of time in Google Meet, muting, unmuting, sharing screen, layout options, just to make that easier, then let us know. Did anyone come on after Darren before I move on to a question we've got from Sonia in the comments? Good, cool. So this was just a question about, which is a really relevant question. Okay, great. Teachers commented and has marked the work. How do I see that? How does my child get that feedback? So Lawrence, if I bring your screen back on, I believe I have provided you with a little bit of feedback on your reading and comprehension task. So if you could navigate in there and just kind of show everyone how as a student you can get to that.
So if I'm a student in a class, what I would simply do, what I clicked on was view assignment, and then I would just go back into that document that I had submitted and then click into there. Was it that one?
I've really thrown you under the bus, because I haven't actually clicked on return as the teacher yet.
Yeah, that can be a problem.
So for all those parents out there going, but it doesn't, it's because the teacher forgot sometimes. I'm going to return that now. So we can go from not seeing anything to, I was going to add a really amazing bit of feedback in there as well. Okay, so I've clicked on return in the teacher side of things, and it should take a couple of seconds, and you should see that you can see evidence of a little bit of information on the rubric.
There we go here. So if I just expand that rubric, I can now see the points that I got for that particular element of the task has now been highlighted by Mr. Rouse. And I don't really agree with that, Mark, but hey, if I go down, and he actually knows that, yeah, I've done a solid piece of work on this one, and he's giving me 3 out of 3 as well. And if I go and see, what I can also see is that private comment, well done. And what I could do is, I could ask, sir, why did I not get top marks on understanding the text there? I'm just so I can move on to the next level and progress.
Right, let's move on now. Cool. Yeah, so hopefully, Sonia, if was the sort of correct way to address your question, going into the assignment and clicking view assignment, if it's been marked and returned, that's where you should find the information about how they've got on, be able to access any private comments, and also get some feedback as well. Awesome.
Ben, can I just add to that? Sorry. Sometimes it does depend as well if the teacher has set points for that piece of work. So sometimes you might not see any points if for that piece of work the teacher's decided I'm not awarding any. Maybe they're feeling a bit mean that day. So yeah, it does depend on the day and the piece of work. And it can sometimes be 100 points, which sounds amazing. It can sometimes be 3. So yeah, it depends on the teacher and the task.
And that's a good point. Ben, could you just bring my screen back in, please?
Certainly.
So one of the tasks that I've also got in the classroom is on the Friday one, you will notice that it's got a different icon. It's got a question mark there. So this is just a question that I can answer directly on the assignment. So if I just click into that and view question, I could simply just put my answer the question over here on the right. So this one is what has been the highlight of your week, and I could just answer that. And as you can see here, it's not graded because I just want to check to see how are the students getting on. And that might just be a well-being question that I pose every Friday, and they can say, this is the best bit of learning that I've taken in this class, or anything like that. So just bear in mind there. So I could just answer that and just say, it's great. And then, it's, as we've seen before, it's just turning. Didn't really answer the question there, but you do get the point there in terms of I can just turn that in and I can edit it. And that depends if the teacher has given the option for the student to edit the question. Sometimes that option wouldn't be given, so once it's been turned in, they wouldn't be able to edit the question as well.
Cool, thank you, Lawrence. Okay, I'm aware of time, and people have already done a long day of teaching in the case of our guest today, or a long day of homeschooling plus working plus everything else. So I want to sort of wrap it up, but obviously we would be open to running more of these if that's been useful. So we'd really appreciate if in the comments you want to sort of indicate if you feel that you would appreciate more of this. Equally, if it's given you a little bit more knowledge to go into tomorrow's homeschooling, then we really hope that that's a slightly less stressful experience for you all. And yeah, I think what I wanted to just bring in, if I just bring my own slides back in, we've got some top tips. And while I leave those up on the screen, if I just go through Sonia, Tristan and Darren, any top tips you feel that maybe haven't been mentioned yet that you would want to pass on to the parents who are out there sort of grappling with Google Classroom and the rest? Put you on the spot now.
We're going in order.
Yeah, all right then. All right then, Darren, you can go first.
I would say one of the most common things that we're seeing in school is students saying that they can't access something. And quite often that's because they're on a tablet or a phone, as you mentioned right at the start there. And particularly if they've got their own Gmail account, quite often their phone or their tablet will default to their personal account rather than their school account. And 9 times out of 10, if they can't access something, it's because they don't realize they're still on their personal account, or it's automatically picked up the personal account. And if they just click on their profile picture, they should be able to toggle onto their school account and then be able to access what they're looking for.
Yeah, it's really pertinent. I know so many parents are kind of sharing a device with the child. It's switching between different accounts. There's a Gmail, there's a work account, there's older brothers and sisters accounts, and managing that process and just being aware of that profile picture at the top right is really good advice. Tristan, do you want to add anything to that?
I will, but I couldn't echo that one more. That is the big one. I guess the only thing I'd add is obviously teachers are spending a lot of time marking and providing feedback in a lot of creative ways on work on Google Classroom. The only thing that I would say to parents is do go back and check if there is feedback there. If you don't get the notification, because quite often teachers have spent quite a lot of time giving some really detailed, in-depth feedback, you know, to in order to progress your children's learning. And I would recommend going back, checking previous assignments that have recently been completed to just check if there's any comments that have been made by teachers on there. Yeah,
I would add similar as well. the point about making sure you're logged into your own account is really, really, really important. We've had so many issues at school with that, but mainly just to know, you know, the device that you're using. Maybe share that with the school. So if you are having, you know, you feel like having issues, share with the school what it is that you're using, because most of the time, I think this was mentioned before, if it's a phone or if it's an iPad or a tablet, it is really something simple as just downloading the Google Drive app or downloading the Docs app. And I think once most of our parents had worked that out, they were flying, and that solved a lot of problems.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for those. And I think if there's any, I really hope that for any parent watching, if you're storing up that stupid question, that you really need to make sure that ask it, because as we always say to our students in the classroom, there's no such thing. And it's actually on everyone else's mind as well. Everyone else was thinking it, and there's no such thing. So please just keep on asking. We know how hard you're trying, and we know how trying the situation is. Yeah, anything that comes to mind, we may have jumped over, then we'd really like to know. And also sort of a nod to Teresa there, who is a teaching assistant who's joined this evening. And I don't know if teaching assistants always get the acknowledgement they deserve for the hard work they're putting in supporting. But we'll take that on board, Teresa, and have a look at options for a webinar that can be specific to the teaching assistant role, which I imagine is even more varied than ever before, with the students across many classes you're trying to support and make sure that they're able to access the learning in their different situations. So thank you for putting that in there, and we'll see what we can come up with. Okay, I think the questions that come in, keep the questions coming on the comments. We'll try and pick those up. And if you've got any suggestions about follow-on parent support, guardian support related webinars that we can do, then please let us know. So it just leaves me to say a massive thank you to Sonia, Darren, and Tristan for your time. It's invaluable to have your hands-on experience rather than just the theory coming from myself and Lawrence. It's been a couple of years now for both of us since we departed the classroom. So thank you for that.
Yeah, I just wanted to add also to parents is that don't feel like you have to come away from this and you're going to become power users in Google Classroom. The main thing is to keep on doing what you're doing and just support, and it's just to give you a real feel of how to just navigate and just ask your child questions about Classroom. You're doing a great job, and it is hard. So thank you for staying online until 20 past 6 and attending this webinar. I really hope you got something from it.
Can I also add to that, just a big thank you from schools to parents. We know it's not easy. We're in the same boat, just like us teachers. This is new to many of us. Just keep going. Children are superstars. They will pick it up, and you know, you'll learn so much along the way. So just keep doing what you're doing.
And I would just add to that as well. If you feel like they're not learning, it may just be that they're not learning what was planned, but they're certainly learning, and the problem-solving skills that these young people are developing will certainly stand them in good stead in the future.
Absolutely. And just to finish off, I guess, it is so good to see parents so invested in wanting to help their children with their home learning that, you know, it's brilliant to see. So thank you for attending.
Sorry, I've just got one more thing to say, because I've had this concern from quite a few parents, and you've just reminded me, Darren, there. If anyone's got any concerns about, you know, my child's missing out on reading, writing, and math skills, they're doing everything on the computer all the time, just to reinforce and just sort of reassure you that digital tools are used to enhance those skills. We are still providing learning. We're still working on reading, writing, maths, all those curriculum areas. We're just using a different tool and a different way of doing it. So please do not worry. All of that's still happening.
I think leaving it on don't worry. I know a lot of parents are stressing themselves out with trying to manage all of this. So you heard it from senior leaders at schools here. They don't want you to be worrying. So huge thank you to everyone. Thank you for Lawrence for setting this up and making this happen. Thank you for the teachers for joining us. And most of all, thank you parents and guardians who've joined us and teaching assistants for this call. So obviously feel free to share this around. It's available via YouTube afterwards and to rewatch and recover those demos. And yeah, thank you everyone. Have a great evening.
Thank you.
Take care,
Thank
everyone.
you.